The air in the room turned to ice as my wife's laughter sliced through the chatter, her words ablade. Oh, I'd never marry him again. The dinner party froze, forks paused midair, wine glasses hovering, eyes darting to me. Her giggle lingered, sharp and careless, as if she hadn't just cracked open my chest in front of our closest friends. I forced a smile, the kind that stings like a fresh bruise, and raised my glass. To bad decisions, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my gut. The room exhaled, laughter bubbling up again, but her eyes didn't meet mine. They hadn't for weeks. The dining room glowed under the chandelier's amber light, casting shadows on the mahogany table cluttered with half-empty plates and smudged napkins. The scent of roasted lamb and rosemary hung heavy, mingling with the faint tang of red wine. My best friend, Tom, clapped my shoulder, his grin too wide, his cologne too strong. She's just teasing, mate, he whispered, but his hand lingered a beat too long. I nodded, swallowing the sour knot in my throat. Emma, my wife of 10 years, was already turning away, her auburn hair catching the light as she leaned toward Sarah, her voice low and conspiratorial. Something about her ease, her dismissal, not at me, a splinter I couldn't ignore. I'd noticed the signs for months, though I'd buried them under excuses. The late nights at her law firm, her phone angled just out of sight, the way her perfume seemed to cling to her clothes differently, like it had been layered over someone else's scent. I told myself it was stress, her caseload, the pressure of her promotion. But doubt is a quiet poison. It seeps in slow and insidious, until every glance, every sigh, feels like a confession. Tonight, her words weren't just a jab. They were a flare, illuminating something I'd refused to see. As the guests chattered, I excused myself, my steps heavy on the oak floor. The hallway was dim, the air cooler, carrying the faint must of old books from my study. My jacket hung on the coat rack, its worn leather a relic of our early days, road trips, late-night diners, her head on my shoulder under starlit skies. I reached for it, needing something familiar to ground me. My fingers brushed the inner pocket, and I froze. Something crinkled. Not mine. I pulled out a folded note, the paper soft and worn, as if it had been handled 100 times. My heart thudded, a dull drum in my ears. I unfolded it. Meet me at the usual spot. 10 p.m. Don't tell him. No signature, just a hurried scrawl in blue ink. The words blurred as my pulse roared. I read it again, each syllable a hammer to my chest. The him was me. I knew it like I knew my own name. My knees buckled, and I gripped the wall, the plaster cool and rough under my palm. The hallway seemed to tilt, the shadows stretching like accusations. I stuffed the note back into the pocket, my hands shaking. Who was she meeting? When? My mind raced, replaying every late night, every vague excuse. The pieces fit too well now. The distracted smiles, the locked phone, the way she'd flinch when I touched her unexpectedly. But I needed proof. I needed to see it, to make it real, because part of me still screamed that this was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Love does that, it blinds you, makes you cling to the wreckage even as it sinks. Back in the dining room, the party had shifted to the living room, where jazz hummed softly from the speakers. Emma stood by the fireplace, her silhouette framed by the flickering glow. She was laughing again, her hand brushing Tom's arm as he leaned in, their heads too close. My stomach churned. Tom, my friend since college, the one who'd stood beside me at our wedding, his vows as my best man echoing in my head. To loyalty, to love, to you both. Had that been a lie too? I didn't confront her then. I couldn't. Not with our friends watching, their eyes already heavy with pity or curiosity. Instead, I played the host, refilling glasses, cracking jokes, my voice a mask over the storm inside. But my eyes kept drifting to the jacket, now slung over a chair, its secret burning a hole in my mind. I had to know. I had to follow her. The next night, I waited. Emma said she had a late meeting, her voice casual as she kissed my cheek, her lips barely grazing my skin. I nodded, my throat tight, and watched her leave, her heels clicking on the hardwood. I gave her 10 minutes, then grabbed the jacket and my keys. The note was still there, its weight heavier than the leather. I drove to the usual spot, a quiet cafe on the edge of town, one we'd frequented in our early days. The irony twisted in my gut like a knife. The cafe was nearly empty, its neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark. I parked across the street, the engine's hum fading into the night's pulse. Rain streaked the windshield, blurring the world into smears of light and shadow. Then I saw her. Emma, stepping out of her car, her coat pulled tight against the drizzle. She didn't go inside. Instead, she walked to a bench under a street lamp, where a figure waited. My breath caught. Tom. They didn't touch, not at first. They sat, heads bowed, talking in low voices I couldn't hear. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. I wanted to scream, to storm out, to demand answers. But I stayed frozen, watching as Tom reached for her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. She didn't pull away. The rain fell harder, drumming on the car roof, drowning out the world but not the ache in my chest. I drove home alone, the note crumpled in my fist. The house was silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your skin. I sat at the kitchen table, the jacket draped over the chair like a ghost. When Emma came home an hour later, her hair damp and her smile forced, I didn't move. She froze when she saw me, her eyes flicking to the jacket. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice too light, too careful. I pulled out the note, holding it up like evidence. Her face drained of color, her lips parting in a silent gasp. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. "In my jacket," I said, my voice low, trembling with rage and hurt. "The one you borrowed last week." She sank into a chair, her hands shaking. "It's not what you think," she started, but her voice cracked, betraying her. "Then what is it?" I snapped, leaning forward. "Tell me, Emma. Tell me why you're meeting Tom in secret. Tell me why you laughed about not marrying me again." Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. "I didn't mean it," she said. The laugh, the comment, it was stupid, a joke. "But Tom and I," she swallowed, her voice barely audible. "We've been struggling. You've been so distant, and he was there listening. It wasn't physical. It was emotional." Emotional. The word tasted like ash. "You think that makes it better? That you gave him pieces of you I thought were mine?" She reached for me, but I pulled back, the space between us a chasm. "I love you," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how to fix us." I stood, the note falling to the floor. "You didn't try," I said, my voice cold. "You chose him." As I walked out, the jacket in my arms, I heard her sob, a sound that echoed in my bones. But I kept going, into the rain, into the night, where the truth couldn't hide anymore.